Hi, friends, and thank you for tuning in to the Still Podcast Author Series. My name is Heather Still, and this podcast is to get to know successful indie writers, their books, and their writing process. Thank you for joining us. If you like what you hear and what you see, please follow us, subscribe, follow the links, leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. And tune in next time. Hello, and thank you for tuning in to the Still Podcast Author Series. Joining me today is Jill Stahl Tyler. Jill, thank you so much for joining me.
It's fun, Heather. Good to see you again.
Yes. So, if you could just tell us a little bit about you, the author.
So I've always written, I think back, in grade school, high school, all of that, but I actually wrote regularly, and I have an agricultural communications degree and studied communications in general, not just writing. So professionally, I've had to write magazine articles. For example, I've internationally published about hogs, which is quite fun. But I was always writing for the newspaper here locally about school board matters and education in general, because I was on the school board for 8 years and I wanted the public to see something good. And most of the time, what made it to the newspaper was anything that was controversial or not so positive. So I was writing kind of as a focus of my own kids were in the school and here's what's going on. And people would like to know what's going on and hearing positive things. I'd stopped that for a little bit. And then when the pandemic came, I was really tired of hearing people complain all the time. I mean, I was complaining myself. I think I was tired of myself complaining as well. So I decided, a person from the Boston Globe asked, has anyone actually seen anything good come out of the pandemic? And I immediately had like 3 quick answers and I shot them off to her. And then I thought, no, that was a good exercise. I felt better myself. And I thought maybe I should write something about this. And so I just wrote it and I just started chronicling every day. And I sent them on a weekly basis to the paper and people really responded.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So first off, there was so much in there. So thank you for trying to put positives from a school teacher. Thank you for working at putting positives out. You are so right about, all the negatives coming out, the controversial stuff. So thank you for that. School teachers nationwide need you. So thank you for that. You published internationally. That's awesome. I'm curious about the
For hog
hogs.
farmers, so I'm not sure that it's like a very broad audience.
It's very niche.
Very fun.
But that's awesome. And then, and reading your Silver Linings journal, I've like almost in a journal format, like you were journaling, but you actually mentioned teacher appreciation. Thank you for that. As a teacher going through COVID and going through the distance learning and all that, and it's so much harder now coming back. We really appreciate all the positives. Silver linings. I was going somewhere with that too. There was a third thing I wanted to comment on. Silver linings. I can't remember.
It'll come to you.
It'll come to me. Absolutely. You just would you? Oh. Okay.
Being paper or that people resonated. Was it one of those?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the problem. I need to just start writing stuff down. But okay, so well, thank you so much for telling us more about your writing. And I know, having read your Silver Linings, I'll have to tell you that it ends on every single day ends on a positive. And because of that, I find myself reading it at night before going to bed. Right? There's a lot of negative stuff that happens in the daytime, and it's so positive. So I wanted to let you know that we're 3 years past, and I'm getting a lot out of reading.
Oh, that's fun, because that's my fear, that no one cares. I mean, there was nothing really great overall about a pandemic that shut down the world, that caused so many deaths, that caused so much division politically, that still carries forward. There's lots of negatives that we can go on about the pandemic, right? So it's nice to hear that even 3 years later, you can pick it up and remember some of it. It was funny when I was looking for stuff to send to you, and like the trailer that we had made and talked about the dogs, and I just re-listened to some of my own recording of the book, and I was struck by that oh yeah, this really was in its own way. I approached it really naive, and it ended up having a super profound effect on me. And the comments that I've gotten back in some of the reviews that are on Amazon from people that have read it is that they too were positively influenced by just hearing something positive out of something really negative.
Yeah, and that's really good to hear. I don't know if you so for me, we the COVID shutdown is what I really think of as the first 2 months, right? Middle of March through like middle of May, when that was like the scariest time, when you didn't know how people were going to react. Was, were people going to be out looting stores? Um, just all of that, and the big toilet paper
Yeah,
panic and all of that. And I remember those scary times, but I also remember how awesome it was to have my family and my sons, so I live with my parents and my two sons. So we have three generations of stills sort of living there. And it was a wonderful time in that regards.
yeah. I often said if we could only have all known around the world, this is going to be a pause from normal life. You don't have to worry about paying bills. You don't have to worry about defaulting on mortgages and losing your house or whatever, the ultimate financial fears were. We would have enjoyed that break. It was like a forced time of being more intentionally with ourselves and the people that we choose to be around at that time. That was the really positive part. I don't know if Vermont and California might have done things hugely differently. But I think our darkest times here were probably October, November, December of 2020. And I actually determined I was going to write the book for a whole year. Again, I was naive and thought the pandemic would, I mean, originally when I started writing it, I'm like, yeah, everything will be back to normal by June. And then I thought everything would be back to normal by October. And then I thought, well, surely by January, and then surely by the next year. And it just kept dragging on. And the act of looking for something every single day was really powerful for me. Um, just to keep that habit of, okay. And it wasn't the game that I played with myself wasn't just find something positive, which I make my kids do every single day. I do two good things of the day as we go around the supper table. It's never, a lot of people tell me they do roses and thorns, and I don't let them do that. They can talk about whatever they want, but I insist that we come up with two good things every day. And that's the stuff I want them to talk about and to dwell on. And then this game was one step further. It was something good that only happened because we were in the middle of the pandemic. It couldn't just be like, oh, the sunset was really
Okay.
beautiful today. It had to be something that I only was experiencing because we were in this really strange world.
Right. And you did that every day.
Every day I started April 17th and then went a full year. And then, of course, it's a habit. So then I kept going for a while in my head, even though I
Mhm.
wasn't writing them down.
Which sounds so healthy.
And there's days in this year-long chronicle where I admit that today is really hard. I don't really have a good thing. And then I step back and look at it again and like, yep. I actually was listening to like June 1st and noticing that I was saying, this is a lesson that I'm learning, and I have a feeling I'm going to have to keep going back to this lesson. And I did. That
Hmm.
just today's not easy, but I'm going to dig deep and figure out something. There has to be something that was decent today.
Right. And I mean, that's just a wonderful life lesson. Like I said, my life has gotten so much harder since the pandemic. Um, my mom died almost a year ago. She died a year ago on the 28th of November, and my dog unfortunately died over the summer. I mean, my life this past year got so much harder. I fell down a full flight of stairs, landed on my face, wound up with a severe concussion for several months.
Well,
Like my life the past year has been so hard. And I'm reading your silver linings now, and I'm getting so much from it. So I don't think, like I said, it might have helped you during the pandemic, but I think it can help a lot of us now, post-pandemic. I hope we're post-pandemic.
I hope so.
It is, it's December 2nd, 2023. I hope we're post-pandemic now.
I'm really hopeful that that's the sort of thing too. It's funny that since I published it, I've actually read different articles or read different research that says this is actually a really healthy lifelong habit. The two good things that I make my children do, or just looking on the bright side in general, that these are things that actually help us all live fuller, happier lives. So, yay. I mean, it wasn't anything that was that earth shattering, but it turns out that it actually, this sort of activity and mindfulness and whatever is as good as any drug that they can come up with in a lot of studies. So,
Yeah. So my aunt has published a couple of books. One of them is Blow a Gasket, Not a No, Blow a Bubble. Whoa. Blow a Bubble, Not a Gasket. And it's
that's
all about finding the humor and making sure you laugh, and how even if you're not feeling the laughter and you force laughter, it's still going to make you feel better. So I know my aunt has done a lot of research on that. She's a motivational speaker, Jamie Walters.
fun.
So I'm just saying she totally gets what you're saying. And I know she'll love listening to this.
That's
Um, and with your challenge of finding two positives, I know you said that normally your kids say dinner is one of the positives.
fun. So yeah, and the two good things of the day, sometimes, oddly enough, teenagers aren't really excited about playing my game. Sometimes my husband's not really excited about playing. So when they can't do that, they'll come up with basic things like lunch and dinner. Or, just my husband's often, his statement is, my breakfast sandwich was pretty good. I'm like, okay, well, appreciate the food, right? But it's fun. It's fun to hear what people can come up with when you put them on the spot for it. And at the end of the year, I also make everybody in the family has to come up with their two highlights of the year. I put that in the family Christmas
Okay.
card
Oh,
right now and send them out, which are fun to see, like, what's on their brains, what was it that stuck out.
yeah. So, in light of that, and also in light of how you're still in the habit of looking for the positives, I'm curious, what's next? What do you have planned next?
So in terms of writing, for me planning next, it was one of the positives of writing Silver Linings was it got me into the whole idea that, I've always had in the back of my head, I'd like to write a book. This wasn't the book that I was thinking I was going to write. It was my first book. But it was great. As you well know, there's a whole process. There's the process of writing, and I was congratulating myself, yeah, I've done this. And then I realized, no, there's actually the process of publishing it. And I chose to do self-publishing. I didn't feel like going down the whole search for a traditional publisher.
Mhm.
Uh, so I got to learn about editing and formatting and preparing the book to actually book cover design and making it something that could be actually put up and put for sale.
Mhm.
And then the next whole stage is book marketing and learning all of the pieces that go with that. So after doing that, I kind of thought, well, now I should really go forward. So I have the next project that I have almost done is a children's book. That one came out of a fun happenstance. I work with the international exchange students here locally, which was one of the things during COVID that got shut down.
Right.
And what last year when one of the kids came in, she's from Armenia, her name's Koch, and she said she had this dream that she'd always like to illustrate. She loves to draw and she'd love to illustrate, particularly a children's book. And I said, funny you mentioned that because I think it'd be fun to write one. And so we set it up with her art teacher. She could do a special project that was independent. And he said yes, because she was supremely talented and he wanted to support that. And then sometime in the end of December, she's like, early January, she said, yes, I'm definitely doing this second semester. So I need to see the book so that I can figure out what to draw. And I said, oh, then I guess I better write the book. So in 2 days, I sat down and wrote the book that had been in my head since actually September of 2020 when we went on a hike in the White Mountains, and so which are in New Hampshire. So I wrote the book, and she's illustrated it. She's almost done with the last illustration. She had to learn how to draw a moose, which was probably the biggest challenge of the book for her. And then we're going to publish it. We'll publish it in English and in Armenian because then her friends can have it too.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the next immediate project. And then I've also started one. I like a book that has, I've always looked for a book that has a little bit more reality about dairy farming, since that's my background, and shows agriculture not in the hee-haw, farmer in the dell, old McDonald type children's book stereotypes, and also carries forward into a lot of normal like television or adult viewing. So I wanted to do some of that but in a novel, not like in your face, this is what dairy farming's like, but just that's the setting. So
Okay.
I have a series of 4 plotted out, and I'm probably 2/3 of the way through the first book.
Okay.
And then I started the novella version that would be the free part
Mm-hmm.
for the marketing. I chose to do it. I started doing it during NaNoWriMo during the November writing last year. And I thought, no, 2 years ago I started it. And I thought it would be fun to just do a Thanksgiving. I guess because my mind was on Thanksgiving in November. So it's a Thanksgiving gathering, which kind of sets the stage for things that start actually in my book in January. So
Well, and you're in Vermont, and isn't Thanksgiving time pretty awesome with the autumn leaves?
no,
No,
it's
it's
still
past.
it's past. Yeah,
Okay.
we should do Canadian Thanksgiving, which is like
Okay.
the second or third week of October. Our peak leaves they used before so much global warming, used to always be Indigenous Peoples Day weekend. Now it is more like October 15th, 16th. We seem to peak. Uh,
Okay.
so, and then we're completely done by the end of October. We have very few leaves left. And by November, but we had snow. So that's
Okay. So it's the beginning of December, and the leaves at my school are their beautiful fall colors right now. So
fun.
there's a
Fun.
difference between California and
Yeah,
Vermont, but we do have the season. We do have the changing leaves. It's just late
short.
and late.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
we'll see leaves again, Heather, sometime in end of April, early May.
Okay. Awesome. So I
Um,
wanted to go back. You mentioned um, bringing a positive light or a different light to dairy farming, and I love that you're going to you're setting your novel with that background because, of course, the whole write what you know
right.
bit, and I'm terrible at that. I need to get better at writing what I know, but and I really like that. And you mentioned, and I just total tangent, but I follow Knuckle Bump Farms
Oh,
on
goodness.
Instagram. I'm
That's a-
kind of obsessed with her. So it's her grandparents' farm. So, but she does the social media, and her Emmanuel Don't went viral. I don't know how long ago. I guess I was pretty short after that. Emmanuel's an emu,
Oh,
and but they have a ridiculous amount of animals on this farm. So they have the dairy cows, they've got regular cows, they've got ducks. I mean, and now they've gotten into rescuing dogs off of the euthanasia list,
oh boy.
and people are dumping ducks and birds on their farm, and there's like, hey, we got please stop.
Okay.
But it's just look into it because I think
That's
it's
gonna be
really
fun to
cool.
see. I love
I'm
it.
constantly buying stuff. Like I bought their 2024 calendar and I just bought the Emmanuel Christmas one.
I
So
love
just
that they figured out how to do it. That's part of my business that I've had for 30 years is also working with dairy farmers. And
okay.
one of the things that we've looked at was like making more from milk. Like what else can you do on your farm that
Mhm.
brings in income? So I love it when people figure out something that just sounds like that person's kind of genius at it, actually.
So I'm really excited about your upcoming books. So please keep me updated. And, we met at 20 Books Vegas, and I'm just curious about your big takeaways or highlights from the convention.
So I had two, I think, really. The first one was that everybody was so approachable. Ended up talking to someone who was on the high-powered author panel, and she was absolutely like a normal person. And she was curious about what I was writing, and I'm like this tall in comparison to your like huge career that you have. And but she was generous and kind and just warm. It was amazing. And I found that from everybody that I talked to. And I'm actually really quite extroverted, but started out at the conference pretty like I don't belong here, and I didn't feel like I should talk to a lot of people. So I guess my biggest takeaway on that is because everyone's so kind and really was supportive of everybody, no matter where they were. Anybody who goes to the conference, we should all just step forward right from the beginning and jump
Mhm.
in, because people really were. The second one was a huge aha moment of listening to the children's book panel. And I wish I would have had more of that and more actually of the nonfiction. I'm hoping maybe next year they will. But the one woman said, they asked, what do you wish people knew or that you had known before you started about children's books? And she said, I wish I had understood that you can make a really good living from children's books. It is not just a book here or there. And she said, it is actually a real fulfilling career if you choose this and go forward with it. And the other people on the panel were all nodding. So it was like, wow, because I kind of look at it as like, well, I still don't think that I'll be a multimillionaire from anything that I'm writing, but it was nice to hear that that is a viable thing. That I always look at the writing and question, if I'm writing something that nobody's ever going to read or whatever, is it worth my time? And that was one of the things that people talk about it. They talked about it at 20 Books Vegas, right? But they always talk about in all the podcasts and books and everything on writing is kind of find your why of why you wanted to write the story, and then why you want to publish it and why you want to get it out. And then as long as you're accomplishing that why, they don't necessarily draw this together, but that's my interpretation of it. As long as you know your why, you're okay with whatever happens. So if my why to publish a children's book is to make $100,000 on that book, and I only make 100 after I pay for illustration or whatever, then why should I do that? But if my why is I wanted to write this book about silver linings because I think it has value to someone who's reading it, and I hope that, if one person finds value, then I'm happy that I've done that. Then that's a different why entirely, right?
And it's a
One of
more
the
rewarding why.
Yeah, it's one of those questions that they always urge people to answer, and I find I have different answers for different books. But what was your why? What was your big takeaway?
Oh, yeah. I'm still working on my why, to be honest, but I had a big takeaway for children's books. So I went to the How to Be Successful Selling Middle Grade Books.
Yeah, I
Now,
didn't
I
go.
have no desire to write middle grade books, but I learned so much from this one because my series has 13-year-old protagonists. And in the middle grade slash young adult world, that's like a no-no. Don't write 13 and 14-year-old protagonists because the books don't sell. There's no, you don't know, are they YA, are they MG? And this author, Melissa Torres, I hope I get her name right, Melissa Torres, was saying, no, you don't call it YA, you don't call it MG. That's for traditional publishers to know where to put the book in a
On the shelf.
bookstore. What parents want to know is what's good for their kids by age and grade. So you
Mm.
put good for ages 11 to 14, good for middle school
Huh.
students. And that made the whole trip worth it right there, that little nugget, because I've been really worried about that.
Mm.
So I don't have to put middle grade, which I don't want to do, or young adult, which they're really young adult, right? I can put for ages 11 to 14 middle
I love that.
school. It was
I love
huge.
what different places, different speakers just touched on something and then, like your brain runs off, like that's exciting. Yeah, there was so much.
Actually have one more takeaway, and that's what we're doing here. And I know going to writers conferences, a big part of it is networking with other writers. But what was different about the 20 Vegas one was these other writers were almost all published as well. The other conferences I've gone to, the other writers are like me and haven't been published. So
Interesting.
right. So just being able to talk with you and Albie and Jessica and Nicole and Kristen. I mean, actually, that group that we were out with that Wednesday night, I think it was,
Uh-huh.
I was the only one that hadn't been published. And so it was wonderful talking with all the other writers, all the other attendees, and learning so much from them. So that was just as valuable as the whole conference itself. So thank you.
Everything about it was really valuable. I'm glad I went. I'm not sure if I can go again next year.
Do you have any advice for new indie authors like myself who haven't been published yet, but are working towards that goal?
Yeah, I think the answer is publish. From that, I mean, that's basically what I took away from 20 Books Vegas too, wasn't it? Sasha Black. Somebody that was really big up there was like her mom kept saying, "Well, what are you going to do with this? Just hit the button, like put it out there for the world, see what happens." And I remember hitting the button and like, okay, so now it's out there in the world. Is anyone going to care? Will it be an overnight sensation? All the different extremes that might happen. And of course, nothing that dramatic probably happens to almost everybody. It didn't happen to me. But anyway, publish. Put it out there, Heather. Go forward. See what happens. Because the next work of it, I mean, that was really the celebratory thing to me was like, okay, I did the full year. Yay, I've done it. And then I realized, oh no, now I have to learn all these other skills to format and fighting through the formatting was a pain. And then once I finally hit the button, I'm like, okay. But in the formatting process, I'd read enough stuff and learned enough from blogs and podcasts that this wasn't going to be an overnight thing. And I should just look at it. But anyway, still felt that it had value and hit the button. Told my
So,
friend,
so
look forward.
what was between finishing the book and publishing it? What was that window? About how long?
So because I couldn't do a lot of things still because in my business because of COVID, I had more time to dedicate to it. So it was not as long. My original intent was to publish every month and just do like June or April,
Mhm.
May, June, whatever. But they were so ridiculously short because some of them are three paragraphs, some of them are a page and a half for each day. So by the time you get done with a month, it's not necessarily very big. So then I published them at 6 months is when I really started to try to format and put it all together. And then I was playing with this, well, should I wait till 12 months and whatever? Anyway, I published sporadically as it went, and then it looked like I had all these books published, right? Because I had each month for a while, and then I had to go back and take them down. Interestingly, now Amazon said this book has very limited print editions. I mean, I set up the print, I set up a large print copy, and I set up the ebook.
Awesome. So I'll play June 1st for this podcast.
You're listening to Silver Linings, Good Things That Happened Because of a Pandemic. Written and narrated by Jill Stahl Tyler, coming to you from the state of Vermont in the United States of America. June 1, 2020. Learning Life Lessons. Today is June 1, so that means summer. Up until March, we were on a track to repeat a lot of last year's plans, plus adding in a few new ones. An internship for one son, graduation parties with friends, a group of exchange Spanish students to meet, coordination of fun activities like drive-in movies, bowling, amusement parks, and trips to Boston and New York. A trip to the Midwest to see relatives. The beach in Rhode Island. A daughter flying on her own all the way to Europe to meet up with former exchange students. A journey out west to celebrate our 25th wedding anniversary. Spanish daughter number 2 returning for a visit. Lacrosse tournament. As of today, there are 3 of those items potentially on our list of things going on this summer. Just 3 remain, and none is certain. Way back in March, doesn't it feel like a lifetime ago? I thought we'd be cruising back to normal by May. Or maybe by June. I watched each of these items get picked off one by one, slowly and painfully. I'm reaching a new mental state now. Maybe that's not entirely true, yet anyway. But definitely, I see glimpses of it, and I believe that I need to embrace it. It's the flexibility towards everything. It's like thinking that I'm off to the beach in Newport, Rhode Island, and deciding that South Pond just up the road is actually a superior option. It's the decision to recognize the gain of the 3 hours that I didn't have to drive, to enjoy the serenity of a local pond instead of dwelling on the lack of waves crashing in from the ocean. It's recognizing that Newport will still be there another day and relishing the joy that's going on right now. That's my silver lining for today, learning to embrace what is and letting go of dreams for what just cannot be right now. I have a feeling that this is not a lesson that's learned quickly, and I think I'll be returning to it often. Thanks for listening to Silver Linings. I hope you found some good things in your own pandemic world too. If you have, I'd love to hear about them. Go to Facebook and search for Silver Linings. We have a group set up there. Share your good things that happened because of a pandemic. Silver Linings is published as a weekly podcast or through Amazon as an audiobook, ebook, and paperback. First was like, wow, this is really... I had several thoughts when I went back and listened to that. It was like, okay, first I was like, really like, I believed I could do this and I had no idea what I was doing. And the second was I was so naive of how long it was going to be and how long the process was going to be to get out of COVID. And then my third thought was, wow, I had great wisdom. I should come back to this and remind myself because I forget these lessons that I learned. It was so silly. But I was like, this was really profound what I was learning. It was fun.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, for sharing your writing process and the journey and giving us some advice. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us.
It's fun to talk to you, Heather.
Thank you for joining us. Feel free to subscribe, like us, rate us. Look forward to seeing you next time.